Oh, one of the great modern theater songs from Hair, ladies and gentlemen, Frank Mills. Oh, and the Mills are churning here
Yes.
in the neighborhood. We are so delighted. We are so thrilled. Let me give an introduction to the actress, the wonderful veteran actress who is with us. This is a woman who started first in playing in a band called The Shirts, way in like the CBGB era, or what that would be the Alphabet, the Kaf Bet era, Kaf Bet. Then I'm a rabbi. This is why I do these things. Then she was also plucked out of semi-obscurity by Milos Foreman to be in the movie of Hair. That's why they played Hair, Frank Mills back then. She was in the original Stephen Sondheim musical Assassins off-Broadway. She was also in the Full Monty by our friend of the neighborhood, David Yazbek. She was in a movie by another friend of the neighborhood, Ari Gold, a film you've never heard of called The Adventures of Power, about a drum-playing person. Yeah, yes, we know this. We do our homework here. She is, of course, best known for playing a mute person on Orange is the New Black, or since I'm Jewish, basically everything for me is sepia is the new brown. That's how I kind of like it. She won a SAG award as part of the ensemble. She was also on TV in Cheers and Miami Vice. She was in an off-Broadway show just a couple of months ago when there was off-Broadway called Broadway Bounty Hunter, which was a fantasy based on her life, sort of. And reviewing that show, someone that Dave knows very well, Michael Summers of New Jersey, called Annie Golden, quote, a potent presence and a vocal powerhouse. So ladies and gentlemen, welcome with great power and joy. She will be showering us with love, a golden shower, if you will. Annie Golden, shalom, Annie. Can you hear? Hello? We can hear. Oh, no. Are you
Shalom.
Shalom to you. Oh,
Am I here?
Oh, there we go. How are you doing? How's it going? How are you feeling, first of all?
Can you hear me?
I hear you. You're
okay.
Okay,
Well,
very good. Yes.
I'm feeling fine. I'm feeling isolated. I'm feeling hopeful.
Hopeful? How are you hopeful?
For the season.
Hopeful? Yeah. But what is making you
hopeful? Spring, Easter, Passover, being delivered from danger, and the Feast of the Resurrection, new birth, rebirth. I'm feeling hopeful.
God willing. God. Let me ask, what are you? I mean, you have a name that could be Jewish, could be Presbyterian. What are you, religiously speaking?
Irish Catholic.
Oh, there you go. So what are you guilty about? I mean.
I'm an imposter.
Indeed. So here's the deal. So how do you, as someone who is used to going out there doing theater, doing stuff, we know you're doing a podcast where we'll talk about that, of course, but the reading, the show Bleeding Love, what a title. But okay, so how are you occupying your time at home for a month and a half?
Well, I have a neighbor downstairs, Estelle. She's 88 years old, Estelle Pachter. I visit her every day to get her mail.
Oh.
Every 2 weeks I get our groceries, so I have 2 lists instead of 1. And my family is within walking distance, so I do a 20-minute walk when I can, although my sister was a little upset the other day that I went out at all, so I stopped visiting her and stayed in the house. So I was on a call with the director yesterday. I arranged this with you guys to talk about Bleeding Love. We actually recorded it 2 Sundays ago while we were in isolation and quarantine. So where there's a will, there's a way.
Yes, or as I like to say, when there's a will, there's a dead person. But no, it's just a little old pun joke.
Yes, and some needy heirs lining up, right.
Now, we know horribly we lost Terrence McNally and John Pry. Have you lost any colleagues or professional people that you've known and worked with from the COVID?
Well, Terrence worked with David Yazbek and I on Full Monty from day one.
Yeah.
And I went to Terrence's 80th birthday party last year, and I can say that we were very close. I watch the news once a day. So I spend my time with old movies and TV shows. So a friend had to text me and tell me about Terrence. So that was devastating. I have a friend right now who's in isolation. He's an essential worker for the MTA. So he tested positive. So we're praying for him, but they didn't put him on a ventilator. So he's home. So I think that's good news.
Halabai, it should only be, halabai means God willing. It should only
Yes.
be. Hey, but what old movies are you watching?
Oh, I watched, what was one of my favorites? I watched Casablanca, of course. I like noir movies. I watched The Bad and the Beautiful. Kirk Douglas was my idol. I got to make a movie with him, the only movie he made with his son, Michael Douglas. Bernadette Peters was in it too. They also celebrated the family Seder.
Yeah.
Yes, yeah. Yeah.
I told you,
yes, I got to work with Kirk Douglas.
So what was that like? What was it like working with Kirk and Michael on the same film? Any anecdotes, any stories?
Oh, it was pretty wonderful. An actor named Josh Pace was also in the scenes with me. Yes.
Like Pace? Wow. Yes. I like him.
And yes. Yes, okay, he's a good actor. And Michael played a lawyer. It was his father's law firm, so he was carrying on the legacy. So there were portraits painted of the person who started the business, which was his father, played by Kirk Douglas. And Kirk had already had his stroke and was coming back with speech therapy. And he would take naps in the middle of the afternoon to get through the day.
Oh,
and he was just darling and dreamy. And so I've been watching The Bad and the Beautiful. I've been watching Gunfight at OK Corral. All these, dreamy, macho, Kirk Douglas, Burt Lancaster, really, really wonderful movies, black and white and then color.
Oh, fantastic. So if you could pick a movie, one of your favorite or movies that you love, where you would have been in them as a character, male or female, what would it have been?
Even if I was too young to have been in it?
Well, maybe a younger you or an older you or something like that, yeah. And it was like, if you could go back now, any movie, could be Citizen Kane, it could be, Herbie the Love Bug, anything in between, like any character.
Yeah.
Who would you play?
I like, I'm a big John Cassavetes fan.
Okay.
And his whole repertory company, Jenna Rollins, Peter Falk, Ben Gazzara. So I like husbands. I like husbands. So if I could have been anyone
below, but yeah. No, I'm kidding.
Yeah, husbands. Yeah.
Okay.
I would have loved to have been in that movie.
So let's roll it back. We're talking, of course, to the delightful Annie Golden here in the neighborhood. We're talking movies, but let's start with music. You were back in the scene, as it were, in the 1970s, appearing at CBGB's with the band The Shirts. Please tell me, first of all, and I always ask this, was the women's bathroom as bad as the men's bathroom at CBGB's?
What woman's? It was all the same. It was ahead of its time. It was unisex.
Head being the operative term, but oh wow, you will. But so give us some CBG, give us some stories about Blondie or the Talking Heads or the Sex Pistols or whoever. Who did you run into back then? And tell us some disgusting, wonderful, horrible stories that era.
Well, I remember playing with the Cars.
Oh wow!
Came down from Boston. And we were on the bill with them for their first gig at CBGB's. I remember that Elliot Easton, his guitar was not working, so the Shirts took him on the subway uptown to Sam Ash on 46th Street, so he couldn't get it repaired in time, so he just bought a new guitar. And I remember that, and I also remember the Police. Their first gig in New York was at CBGB's. and they were a bleached blonde reggae ska trio.
Right.
When we saw them first. Yeah. So, I've 6 degrees of separation. I could name names. I've got a lot of stories. And of course the talking heads we were always close to. Anybody you were on the bill with back in the day, you were, you were bonded for life. That whole CBGB's Live at CBGB's album that we did, all of those bands that were on, they were actually the cast-offs. They were the ones who didn't get signed yet.
Yes.
So Hilly took it under his
Hilly Crystal, the owner of
Hilly Crystal, yes.
Yeah. So
the owner, the Godfather.
Now you just mentioned that you could tell 100 stories. So tell one. Not just naming names, but what's a cute story or a terrible story or something that you remember funny or amazing that happened backstage or on stage in this era?
I remember a band called the Tough Darts. I was a fan of theirs, and their lead singer was Robert Gordon, and his main influence was Elvis Presley.
Right.
So we covers of Elvis because that was Robert's wheelhouse, and that was his forte. And he would sing "One Night with You," and I would just scream like a teenager, like a fan.
Yeah.
And when we lost Elvis Presley, we all gathered at CBGB's at the back end of the bar, raised a glass, and so that really wasn't the punk era to revere Elvis, but Robert Gordon, the Tough Darts, and the Shirts and I were at the back of the bar raising a glass to Elvis because we knew what his legacy was, and that any one of us could say we stood on his shoulders, if only to say that he started rock and roll and that he started something. And although we didn't know it at the time,
10 years earlier, black people started rock and roll. Howlin' Wolf and Ma Rainey.
Absolutely.
Yeah. But let me ask you what.
Yeah, because he was a Southern boy, of course.
True. But what bands were you listening to that influenced you then and even unto this day? What groups did you grow up and what albums did you have, back in the day?
Well, it was kind of interesting because my influences were always the pop stars who did recordings, did concerts, did movies, musicals and straight. Musicals and dramas and comedies without music. So my idols were Judy Garland, Frank Sinatra, David Bowie.
Oh,
to me that's a natural progression, but to other people it's like, what?
No, it's a wonderful crop. It's just Sinatra and Bowie, or Bing Crosby and Bowie. They got together. But so what? When did you realize, and I always ask this question, that you were going to perform, be it singing or acting or both? When as a child or a teenager, did you go like, yeah, I got to do this?
Well, I realized I had a powerful voice in the 3rd grade when we were learning a Christmas hymn to the melody of Greensleeves, and the hymn was called "What Child Is This?" And the teacher was writing the lyrics. The sister was writing the lyrics on the board, and she couldn't remember the melody. She lost the melody, and she was humming it to herself. And then she turned around and she said, "Does anybody remember the melody?" And I sang it back to her in a key that she stopped me and said, "Yeah, okay, yeah. Start a little lower because you're never gonna make it." And I just kept going. And then she called the choir teacher in from another room and she said, "Listen to this." And I sang, and then I was in the choir. So that's when I knew that I could sing, especially hold a tune. And then it wasn't until I got with my band that Milos Foreman came down to CBGB's, either talent scouting or slumming, depending on how you look at it. And he found me and put me in my movie 40 years ago. And we just had a reunion last summer. I had to book out of Broadway Bounty Hunter so that I could go to Connecticut and reunite with my hair tribe. And we hadn't seen each other. Well, I've been in touch because that's me. I just keep in touch. But we hadn't been together in 40 years.
Wow.
So a theater in Connecticut that Milos Foreman had been on the board of, the restoration of this theater. They had a screening of the movie, and people bought tickets to see us all together, and there was a Q&A. And so we got together. That was on a Sunday, so we got together on Friday, and we went into Central Park. And NPR had a film crew there, and I don't know what has become of it or what will become of it. But we were at Bethesda Fountain. We went in the tunnel. We went down the stairs. We were in the band shell, and there was a camera crew there. So, and also we took some photos too. So we were all together after 40 years.
Have you ever had a similar experience with another movie or a show that you were in that is so familial to everybody who was involved that after 20, 30 years you get together and you still have these kind of things? What other times has this happened to you?
Well, I've been very fortunate. I would say Hair, because I'm still in touch with, of course, the movie cast, but I'm also still in touch with some of I wasn't in the original Hair, but I was in the first revival, which was actually a publicity stunt. They set up the revival to promote that they were going to be filming the movie on location in New York. So I have the distinction of being the only person who played the character on stage, on Broadway, and in the film, Jeannie. I'm still in touch with Ellen Foley. I'm still in touch with David Patrick Kelly. I'm still in touch with a lot of people, but also then Full Monty, because Full Monty was the first Broadway musical that I was in on the ground floor and created. And I met David Yazbek in the audition room. And he said to me, I played with you at CBGB's with my band. And I said, who was your band? And he said, Urban Blight. And so then and I remember that was the punk band that had horn section. And some of those guys were in the pit on Broadway when we moved there. So that connection is really lovely.
Yeah. It's also so appropriate because Yazbek is one of the people who moved Broadway forward, from between the Rodgers and Hammerstein and Sondheim and Julie Stein era into a more modern rock era that still doesn't feel like a rock concert. It feels still like Broadway, but it's a modern-ish pop Broadway that works. And did you?
Yes.
Here's a great.
And it's so.
Yeah. Please.
Yeah, go ahead. No, what's your question?
Oh, no, my question was, Full Monty was a hit. When did you realize that it clicked? That was it opening night and then you read the reviews? Or did you know sort of in rehearsals that, oh, this is going to go? Or did it take a few months in and it was like the audience is built and say, hey, this is working out. It's a hit. When did you realize it was happening?
Our director was Jack O'Brien, and he was the artistic director in San Diego at the Old Globe. And we began there. We were in San Diego, and that's when we developed it. And the Old Globe had some success with moving Damn Yankees, starring Jerry Lewis. And we were down at the Old Globe, and we broke those box office receipts, that box office. We broke that record with the Full Monty. And Damn Yankees was a revival, and the Full Monty was an original musical. So we knew that New York was waiting for us to come. Because it's always a crapshoot. You don't know if you're going to move, but we knew we were going to move. So I think we knew down in San Diego that we had something special.
It's a lovely show. It's Yazbek is a very, very talented composer fella. Now, but let me ask you about another show that you were in that didn't have necessarily.
It was his first.
What? It was his first or it wasn't? It was his first Broadway show.
The Full Monty was his first.
Yeah.
The Full Monty was David Yazbek's Broadway debut.
Right. And after that came Dirty Rotten Scoundrels and Women on the Verge and the other.
Oh, yes, many. Yes.
And the Band's Visit, of course, but which is a Jewish person I especially appreciate. But here's a show that did not have that kind of luck. Were you in at some point, not in the Broadway or off-Broadway iteration, but you were involved in Carrie, the redo of the Brian De Palma movie, Carrie. Tell us some stories from the workshop of that show that did not go well, eventually.
Oh, that was, well, I was in it before they went to the National Theater in London and developed it and then brought it back to Broadway. And my girlfriend, Darlene Love, was in the Betty Buckley role of the gym teacher. So I did get to see it on Broadway for a minute because Darlene was in it. But I had done the first inception of Carrie, and Maureen McGovern played my mother, and I was Carrie, and Michael Gore and Dean Pitchford were working it out and writing it, and I was the first Carrie. So we did like a workshop of it, and I was also doing a night shoot of a movie playing a junkie.
Oh, wait, we lost you. Hold it, we've got it.
Night, so I was 24/7. So to play I didn't have to act. I was just really tired all the time and really cranky all the time.
Let me ask you a little more about Carrie. Your voice broke up there a little bit because we have unstable internet. I'm unstable myself, but the internet here is a little bit unstable. Let me ask you though.
Okay.
This is, and I asked this of other actors and stuff. So you were in the workshop of this music before it went to London, before it went to Broadway, etc., and did not do well. But either way, how do you feel as a performer when you're involved in something when they're starting it, and then it comes to London and to New York, and you're not involved and you're asked to see it? Do you sit there stewing? Do you go like, oh, I could have been up on that stage? Or is it just like, it's the luck of the draw?
It's a good story. There are there are recordings of it that people want to collect, and it's early stages that I really didn't expect to continue with it because they were putting it together. And a lot of times as an actor, it's the creatives make the choices, and it doesn't have very much to do with you, your qualification or your perfection in the role or what you bring to the role. They're putting a package together. They had Michael Gore and Dean Pitchford had the National Theater in London. They had the director lined up. They had all the resources that the National Theater has. So sometimes when you're putting something together, you need to understand as an actor that you were in it in such its early inception that there's no way you're going to age out, particularly with a teenager. You're going to age out of the role.
Let me make it a broader question in terms of you audition for it, because you're an actress and actors have to audition and audition and audition. How do you feel when you're up for a role in a movie or a show and you don't get it? Do you see the movie anyway, or do you just go, oh, bad juju, didn't get it, screw it?
If I have friends in it, I will always go see it to support my friends. But otherwise, I don't really see stuff unless my friends are in it or unless my friend wrote it or my people go, what music do you listen to? I don't really listen to me. I write my own music. I have my own band, and the music I listen to, I don't read music, so I'm not quick. I can't look at a sheet, and I have to recall melodies. I'm not reading them. So I'm always studying other people's music.
No, that's fine. Well, by the way, tell us, what is the name of your band, your current, but you're not in the shirts anymore. What band is your band now?
Oh, it's Annie Golden Family and Friends. We're on CD Baby. There's I have an EP of 4 live cuts of songs that I've written. I wrote most of the songs with, I had the Shirts, and then I had a duo in the 90s, singer-songwriter unplugged, 2 voices and guitar, called Golden Carrillo. And I wrote 3 CDs worth of songs with Frank Carrillo. And so some of those songs I still do with a band, and some I've written with other people.
Okay.
So
By
it's
the way,
called Annie Golden, Friends and Family.
Annie Golden. But I do want to give you a warning. As far as I know, CD Baby went out. There's no more CD Baby, so you might want to put your music on another server like Spotify or.
Well, I'm also on Spotify. I'm also on Spotify and iTunes and YouTube. I'm also on Spotify, iTunes, and YouTube. So yeah, we're out there. CD Baby, Annie Golden, Friends and Family.
Speaking of digital things, I do want to tell people that, you're watching Annie Golden now. She's lovely. She's having fun talking to us. But you can also see her shortly by going on the interwebs to see her in a reading of a new play. And you don't have to go to a theater. You can go to a theater. Go see it. You can see it right on your computers like you're watching me now. And this play is called It's called Bleeding Love. Tell us, what the hell is Bleeding Love?
Okay. Well, you can listen to a radio play. Bleeding Love was an apocalyptic rock opera that we recorded the songs to, and Mark Kudish and Naomi Jones and Tony Vincent and Taylor Trench and Sarah Stiles. We recorded the songs in 2016, and we went into the studio and did beautiful recordings. And then the book is written by Harris Duran. The music is written by Arthur Bacon. And the music is so beautiful. And I just got a call when we were all, quarantined. I got a call from Harris saying, we'd like to record the dialogue and put it together as a podcast so people can hear this coincidental, people are quarantined in their homes, and that's what the story was about. It was about a post-apocalyptic time in society when people didn't leave their houses. I'm apparently the oldest person available, and I have, unspecified medications keeping me going. I was a music teacher back when people were allowed to go to lessons and visit one another, and they thought it would be the perfect time to put this together because it's a beautiful piece and make it like a radio play. And that's what it is. We've done it. We did it 2 Sundays ago in our home with my toilet bowl flushing and my radiator clanking with heat coming up. But we put it together, and they're very happy with it. So I'm glad. It seemed impossible, but we did it.
So it's pre-recorded, but people can watch the video of it by going to bleedinglovemusical.com, right? So that they can watch it anytime. Right now, not right now because I'm on the thing, but
on Broadway podcasts.
Broadway podcasts.
It's available on Broadway podcasts.
BroadwayPodcast.com. Yes, BroadwayPodcast.com.
Oh.
Or if not, you'll find it at Bleeding Love Musical.
Let's see.
I'm sure we'll have the link. BleedingLoveMusical.com or Broadway Podcast.
Yes, absolutely. Bleeding Love, bpn.fm, Bleeding Love, or BroadwayPodcastNetwork.com.
Yeah, let's just make these URLs bigger than our actual computer can handle. Broadway Podcast in 2020 during the COVID epidemic.com.org/SXS. Yeah, let's do that. But we want to talk a bit more, of course, with the delightful Annie Golden, because there's so much more to talk about. You were on Broadway doing Eugene O'Neill with Jason Robards and Colleen Dewhurst. Please tell me you have something.
Dewhurst? Yes.
Yeah. Tell us a story. Tell us something about that experience, please.
Well, that was wonderful. We all left from Grand Central to go up to Yale Rep in Connecticut, and we went to New Haven. And I remember I was waiting at the track and with Kira Sedgwick, who I played the bad girl typecasting, and she played the good girl in Our Wilderness. we were doing 2 plays in rep. We were doing Long Day's Journey into Night, and Kira and I were not in Long Day's Journey. And then we were doing Our Wilderness. And as I say, she played the good girl and I played the bad girl. And I was at Grand Central, and Elizabeth Wilson, who was in Our Wilderness with me, was George Hearn, Colleen Dewhurst, Jason Robard, Campbell Scott, Jamie Sheridan, Steve Skybell, who was in the wonderful Yiddish Fiddler on the Roof.
Right.
Steve Skybell played one of the young guys. He played Campbell Scott's, the oldest son in Our Wilderness. He played one of his best buddies. So I have worked with Stephen, ages ago.
Right.
So I'm at Grand Central. I see Elizabeth Wilson walking towards us with her valise. I ask her, Miss Wilson, can I take your bag? She said, oh, aren't you sweet? We all got on the train together. When I got up to New Haven, I wept because I had never gone to university. I had never gone to college. And here I was on campus of Yale University doing a play at Yale Repertory Company. Also, I'd never been trained as an actress. And I was with the likes of Jose Quintero as director. He had the voice box at the time, but he had worked with Colleen and Jason on Eugene O'Neill time and time again. So they had a shorthand with each other. It was wonderful to watch. And then Jamie Sheridan was up there, and William Wise was up there. Jamie Sheridan played the bartender in Our Wilderness. I played the chart at the top of the second act. Arvin Brown was our director. Raphael Sparge was the young leading man in Our Wilderness. And it was an experience that I could not have even imagined having. And it was straight plays. It wasn't a musical. And Colleen was, of course, a smoker, and you were not allowed to smoke in the theaters, even at that time. So I smoked a cigarette at the top of the second act as the bad girl, trying to tempt the boy with cigarettes, booze, and other things.
Ooh,
so I had to smoke a cigarette, and I wasn't a smoker, so I would get lightheaded and dizzy. So I had to smoke 1 cigarette before each show. So I would be out in the alleyway with Colleen Dewhurst having a cigarette. It was a bonding moment.
On stage, were they using real cigarettes at that point, or did they make that herbal weed thing that that are safe?
Oh, it was that terrible clove. Yeah, it was the terrible clove. Yeah. And also, I'll tell you another story. I had a copy of Moon for the Misbegotten. I had a copy of the Eugene O'Neill Moon for the Misbegotten with Colleen Dewhurst and Jason Robards in the lead roles on the cover of that printing.
Wow.
Of that play. So I brought it to work one day, and I asked if she would autograph it for me. And she said, would you leave it with me? And she wrote the whole first inside page. She wrote something for me. And then I brought it to Jason and asked him, Mr. Robards, if he would sign something. And he said, did Colleen sign something? And I said, yes. And he said, well, then will you leave it with me? And he wrote something as well.
Yeah, and you have to understand that if people can get to see, I don't know if it's on YouTube or available, but if you get to see the video of Moon for the Misbegotten with Robards, and Dewhurst is one of the greatest acting performances I've ever seen, male or female, ever. She's tremendous.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. They were the consummate Eugene O'Neill players. They were.
Yeah. Him, I mean, he's great, but her, greater. I mean, this is my personal opinion, but anywho, yeah, I can say these things. They're both dead,
And at that time,
yeah.
And at that time, she did say to me, she said, "Are you familiar with O'Neill?" And I said, "I'm not." And she said, "Well, we see you in the rehearsal room, so we know you're the stuff. You're who he writes for. You're the kind of actress he writes for. So I would say you're too young now, but in the future," she said, "what do you see yourself playing?" And I said, "I always thought I would cut my hair to play Joan of Arc or Peter Pan." And she laughed and she said, Yeah, okay, so you're a tomboy and you do musicals. She said, but you're too young now, but in the future, think of Anna Christie.
Have
That's
you
what
ever
she said
gotten to
to me.
play Anna Christie, Another O'Neill? Have you
So
ever gotten to do
I
it?
always remember that as well.
What have you played Anna Christie? Have you been in?
Yes.
Oh, where? Yeah.
No, and I think that ship has left now because I'm Madame Floy in Bleeding Love, so I'm the oldest person left on the planet apparently. So, so I missed my opportunity, but it was flattering to have Colleen say that.
Absolutely. Well, a musical that you were in was a revival of On the Town, directed by George C. Wolfe. So I'm curious about his methods. What was it like working with George C. Wolfe as a director on that big splashy revival? I think Leah DeLaria was in it, of On the Town.
He has such joie de vivre.
Oh, like me.
George C. Wolfe. He is joyous. He has such passion and joy with what he does, and I loved working with him. And we did it at the Public Theater for the Delacorte at first, so it was like summer camp. We were out under the stars. The backdrop, the bridge was over us. The playing space was under us. And we had the lake in Central Park as our very organic, authentic set. And when those sailors were walking with their sweethearts at the top of the act, it was just so beautiful. And the orchestra up above on the bridge.
But so you loved his style. What is your favorite moment of working with a director? Was it with Arvin Brown? Was it with George C. Wolfe? Was it with Milos Foreman on film? You were in 12 Monkeys, a Terry Gilliam movie. What are some, like, your favorite moments with a director?
Terry Gilliam?
Or any of them, but yeah. So,
Milos,
I'm saying
Milos
like
Foreman.
a memory of something maybe a director taught you that you didn't know about acting or you didn't know about yourself.
Yes. My first movie was Hair for Milos Forman. And I realized, being working class, I realized that this was an opportunity and that I should absorb and be a sponge and try not to be intimidated that I didn't know what was going on. Just be quiet and listen and learn. And he taught me so much about being still and saying a lot with expression, which got me the gig 40 years later in Orange is the New Black, because as Norma Romano, my character was mute. Milos taught me, in particular, the scene in the tunnel, which is lit very dark. I was sitting on one of those boulders in the tunnel, that beautiful, beautiful tunnel. And I was sitting behind Donnie Dacus and Dorsey Wright. And when I had a line, I would say it. And Milos said, "You're talking in the dark. Can you lean forward when you have a line?" He said, "You have no survival instincts. You have no ego. You don't want to be on camera. I'm telling you, you can't be seen unless you're in the light. So when you have a line, find an authentic reason to move forward and say your line and be heard and also be seen." So he said, find your light.
That's one of the oldest director things ever. Is just, know where your light is, so you position it. So, if the thing is here, you got to be in it for the audience to actually catch your eyes and actually see you. We're talking
absolutely
the light full Annie Golden here in the neighborhood. Just a couple of more minutes if we may take your time, because we're having so much fun talking about your life and your career. But I will ask you to pardon my French.
I am too.
Oh, wonderful. For this next question, pardon me, but I have to do this rhyme. What the fuck was Mimi LeDuc?
Well, again, another milestone in my career, whether it was successful or not, or whether people know about it or not. I had the opportunity to work with, and it turned out to be the last theater thing she ever did, I got to work with the fabulous Eartha Kitt.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So Eartha Kitt played Madame Valet, and her part in the piece was Mimi Leduc was the title role, and it was written by Brian Feinstein and Diana Hyland, and Diana wrote the book, and Brian wrote music and lyrics. And it was a project out of the NYU theater program, and they coupled them together, two unlikely people, a middle-aged woman and a young composer, and they came up with Mimi Leduc, and it took place in Paris, who leaves to pursue her dream of going to Paris and being a writer. And so I go to Paris on my own, and Marcus Neville, who I had done the Full Monty with, was in it. The original Toby in Sweeney Todd was in it. Yeah, so Ken Jennings, yes.
Yes.
And so, yes. So I got to work with wonderful people, and
But tell us,
we
please.
did it at the Adirondack Theater.
But obviously, we want to hear. Tell us some story about Eartha Kitt. You must have a memory of her doing something.
Well, we were at New World Stages, which was freshly built. It was a new venue. And Miss Kitt did not have her own dressing room.
Uh-oh.
And she should have. So what they did was they had us, and then they put a gorgeous velvet curtain across. When you don't have a dressing room for Eartha Kitt, you better put a gorgeous velvet drape across. And they had a beautiful plush upholstered easy chair for her, and she had her own section. But it was wonderful to work with her, and I met her daughter, and we sat, and she held court in the most delightful way and told the most beautiful stories, and also heartbreaking stories, because she was a Black performer in America, and then she went to Paris and she was treated like a star, which is what she should have been treated like here. So we heard really wonderful stories behind the scenes, and her dalliances, as she called them.
Oh, with whom? With whom? Come on.
Oh no, I can't. Oh no, I don't remember. She was a lady. She never divulged.
Oh, so she
never
told
named
names. Yeah, okay, got it. So she would say what happened, but not with whom it happened. I get it. That's cool. Can I ask? And
exactly.
Not to be personal, I don't know, but what is your current situation, romantically or not? Is there a person in your life? Has there been recently, or what's your deal in terms of dalliances, if you will?
Well, I think that ship has probably sailed too, Rabbi. But I just want to tell you that I fly solo. I'm the oldest of 6 children, 6 siblings, 4 girls, 2 boys. Irish Catholic family in Brooklyn. I'm still here. Some of my family is still here, and I've traveled the world. So I want for nothing. I have no lack in my life, no lack of love in my life, and nieces and nephews, and big Irish Catholic family. So.
And thank God, all your siblings are alive. They're well. They're okay. All your siblings are alive.
The boys are gone now. The boys are gone.
I'm sorry, I didn't know. Okay.
The boys are gone.
Did your life appreciably change thanks to Orange is the New Black? Did that give you a level of, look, I can retire whenever I want to, or not, or now people see you on the street, they know who you are. Has it changed your life?
Absolutely, for the better. But recently, I was having a moment, and Joaquin Phoenix talked about this with his brother River, that this career does not allow for mourning or grief, because what we present, our product, as it were, is ourselves. So people don't know what you're going through in your personal life, and when they see you out and about, they get excited. You might not want to take a selfie. You might not feel like talking to a complete stranger, but on the upside, it's been wonderful. People who have followed me for years feel vindicated from the success of Orange. They're like, why are you not a household name? Well, Norma Romano now is, so, and it's something I'm very proud of.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, and it's a delightful show. It's a a big hit show. Can I ask, because I'm sure everybody wants to hear, what was your way into the character? As you said, Milos Foreman gave you years ago this idea of being still, of watching, of listening, of just holding back and being expression careful. But into this Norma character, when was the moment that you knew you had her?
I have to tell you that I actually auditioned for Sister Ingalls. I auditioned for the Beth Fowler part, and Genji offered me Norma, and I had no idea the character was mute until I got my copy of the pilot script, and there were no lines for Norma. I had to read the stage directions to know where Norma was and what Norma was doing and what Norma was conveying to the audience. So I think the first time I got on the set, and our director, I think the first thing I did was shave Red's legs. I was shaving Kate Mulgrew's legs, and she was having a conversation with Taylor Schilling, who was the lead, and I was just listening, but actively listening, so that the audience could know that maybe you shouldn't be talking in front of this woman. We don't know who she is, but she's listening really well. And what is she going to do with this information? Because, in closed areas, information is valuable. So, in desperate situations like prison. So it was really the director who said, she said to me, you're really wonderful. She said, you can do more. And I said, well, I don't want to pull focus. I don't have any lines. And she said, oh, but you're in the scene. You're in the scene, so be in the scene. So she gave me the permission to, whatever that was, listen harder, convey to the audience that there might be a threat here with this character who seems like she's a non-entity. She's not important, but she became important throughout the 5 seasons that I was on the show.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I feel like an important person talking with Annie Golden. But before we let her go, I want to remind everybody that you can watch her not just in all the movies that she was in and all the TV shows and stuff, but you can watch her in the podcast of this post-apocalyptic musical called Bleeding Love. You can find out more about it at BroadwayPodcastNetwork.com.
Corrected, Rabbi, it's a podcast, not a video.
I'm sorry, podcast, is it video or audio? Is there video involved? Or is it just audio?
No, it's audio.
Oh, I'm sorry.
It's audio. It's a radio play.
It's a radio. Sometimes with radio plays, you actually see the people in front of stands and microphones, and they're doing it like they're on the, like Prairie Home Companion and that stuff. But no, this is audio only. But you can find it at BroadwayPodcastNetwork.com, or find out. It's much easier to just think of BleedingLoveMusical.com. BleedingLoveMusical.com, and be careful with that URL, because BleedingLoveMusical.org is my proctologist's URL. So you have to be very, very, very careful, right? I'm just kidding. I'm just joking.
You had to go there. You had to go there.
Had to go there. Let me ask you last question for the wonderful Annie Golden. When all this is over, speaking of prisons, we're all under house arrest here. What is the first place that you really want to go? Let's say in July or August, when everything's, God willing, back open and ready for people to converge upon. Where do you want to be?
Well, my sister lives in the neighborhood within walking distance, but as I said, she got upset the other day when I when I came out of the house, she was worried. She's younger than me, so I'm the demographic that we have to worry about. I'm elderly. So I think what I would want to do is go to my sister's house and give her and her son a hug. That's what I want to do. I miss hugs. I miss hugs. I'm a touchy-feely person. I touch people's faces. Ooh, that poor, oh, yeah.
Well, you know what? We're all going to give a collective hug to the wonderful, the lovely Annie Golding. I'm hugging you. I don't know if you can see my hand. Can you actually see me? You're just hearing me. I can't tell. But I'm hugging.
No, I can see you. Yes, I see you.
You're seeing my claw arms here and my talus fringe waving. Hugs to you for being so lovely and so delightful. And once this is all over, you're going to be in a dozen more shows, 12 dozen more movies and TV shows, and of course, podcasts too. Annie Golding, it just remains for me to thank you so incredibly much for being with us in the neighborhood, and shalom and good health to you.
Yes. Thank you. Thank you, David. Thanks.
Thank you. And well, I'll thank David for you. This is Rabbi Sol. Bye-bye. Shalom to you.
Oh, Rabbi Sol Solomon. Yes. Okay. Bye.
Bye.